Now, Eyewitness News NightBEAT.
I think he grew up and decided it was foolish to not be here in the first place, and he decided he wanted to get his day in court. I think the case against him is an extremely weak case. I think he'll be vindicated in court.
But that's not what the jury thought.
She is a survivor of rape, and I think she did magnificently during her testimony.
Tonight, the verdict is in. Alex Kelly found guilty of rape.
Good evening. He's been convicted, but Alex Kelly is not behind bars tonight.
Yes, he was able to post bond even though it was set at $1 million. And tonight there is strong reaction to the guilty verdict. NightBEAT crews have been traveling up and down Fairfield County gathering it. Reporter Kathy Moss is live at the courthouse in Stamford with our top story. Kathy?
Al, good evening to you. Well, the courthouse is now dark, and the crush of people where all this is happening earlier today, now gone. But I'll tell you, word of his guilty verdict spread quickly through Kelly's home turf.
You guys going to make a path over here now. Right now.
Alex, what is your reaction to the verdict? What's your reaction to the verdict, Alex? Facing a maximum, potentially 20 years behind bars, Alex Kelly left the courthouse a convicted felon today. Sheriffs, his family, his fiancée, and her mother surrounding him as he left on a $1 million bond. Moments earlier, when the guilty verdict was read, the 30-year-old former Darien high school wrestling star bolted from his chair shouting, "I'm not guilty. Why are they doing this to me?" He burst into tears, muttering, "I didn't do it." Guards restrained him, his mother and fiancé crying as they looked on. And across the aisle, the woman the jury believed when she said Alex Kelly brutally raped her 11 years ago. She fell into her husband's consoling embrace. Later, he spoke for her.
I'm grateful that the jury was able to focus on the truth.
It's over. My feeling is that the victim has finally been vindicated.
While the prosecutor called it a victory, Alex Kelly's lawyer, Thomas Puccio, called the pretrial publicity almost impossible to overcome, saying he will work on an appeal.
Too much of a very, very negative attitude towards this particular fellow in this community.
Some spectators applauded the verdict as state police whisked away the 3 men and 3 women on the jury. Tonight, jury foreman Robert DeLurth, a 39-year-old salesman, recounted the tense final stretch, deliberating.
We were not too far apart from the get-go from our deliberations. There were some people undecided on certain issues. I, for one. And I just needed some more testimony read back and things to clear my mind up.
And in Darien tonight, as opinions flew,
The verdict sounds right to me.
over at the Kelly home, a somber night with a full house and heavy hearts. And that jury decision was unanimous. Now, Kelly is under 24-hour house arrest at his home. He cannot leave except to go to the doctor or classes, and if so, he goes with his parents. Sentencing is July 24th. Back to you, Al. Donna.
Kathy Moss live in Stamford tonight. Kelly's lawyer, as Kathy mentioned, is going to appeal. Meanwhile, the sentencing, as she also said, July 24th. So stay with Eyewitness News for continuing coverage of this case.
There will be no verdict tonight in the penalty phase of the Oklahoma City bombing trial. Jurors have been deciding whether Timothy McVeigh should be condemned to death until only a few hours ago. They'll be back tomorrow going through a 10-page form with dozens of legal questions to answer. They'll also have to consider mitigating factors offered by the defense. Prosecutors called McVeigh a traitor who deserves to die. But while defense lawyers acknowledge his actions may have been demonic, they stressed he is not a demon, but a boy-next-door type who should be spared an execution. Count on Eyewitness News for continuing coverage as the jury deliberates McVeigh's penalty.
A frustrating development in the case of a teenage girl who claims she was taken against her will, beaten, and possibly sexually assaulted. It's just one of the NightBEAT follow-ups we have for you tonight. The alleged victim says 3 men were involved. She says she was knocked out cold, and when she came to, she was in New Haven's Edgewood Park. Now, police found what they thought might be the suspect's car. It matched the victim's description all right, but it didn't check out. And one of the 3 people authorities have been looking for since last Friday's massive gang raid in New Britain has now been captured. 28-year-old Enrique Morales was arraigned today. He's being held in $2 million bond and faces various racketeering charges.
It's been around for a little more than a quarter of a century, and it's billed as a house of God. So why has this important building been condemned by a parishioner? NightBEAT reporter Tracy Martinez is live at this crumbling church in Vernon. Tracy.
Donna, that parishioner is also the town's building inspector. He says the hardest thing he ever did was closing this church, but he really had no other option. Worshippers jokingly call it Saint Cement, and it's easy to see why the Sacred Heart Church in Vernon has earned this nickname.
As you can see, the outside is the same as the inside, it's just massed concrete.
Built in 1971, 7 stories high in a distinctly pyramid shape. Solely from a visual standpoint, it is an impressive building. However, from an engineering perspective,
it should never have been built in New England. It just cannot withstand the elements.
As proven recently when a large slab of concrete fell more than 80 feet from the ceiling and narrowly missed a church employee who was cleaning up one night.
As she leaned over to get the bucket, this came down right by her ear. Just missed her ear.
Although leaky ceilings, cracked caulking, and crumbling walls have been problematic since the church was built, after this near miss, Father Stan had no choice but to call Bowles, the building inspector, who, by the way, is also a parishioner. After engineers inspected the building, it was condemned. Estimates to repair the church run as high as $200,000 this year alone. So more than likely, Sacred Heart Church will remain closed, and there's a very good chance that it will never reopen. Sad, say parishioners, but still.
We have no intentions of leaving the parish, sir.
Why not?
Why?
It's our home.
We're the same people, and the reason for meeting is the people.
We praise thy name. Meantime, in a small side room adjacent to the crumbling church where Mass is now held, the parish's faith is still rock solid. Now, eventually, if the building continues to crumble, which is very likely, the congregation will have to pay to have it torn down. Donna?
Tracy Martinez live in Vernon. Thanks very much. Well, it was another scorcher out there. We've been on quite a roll, haven't we?
We have, but will this warmer than usual weather continue with us? Hilton Kaderli has a first look at Connecticut's most accurate forecast.
Donna, Al, let's put it this way. We're having a heat wave. Well, we're not. Let's see. You know what? I turned my mic on. You guys ought to be able to hear me. We're having a heat wave? Not quite. We've had a heat wave. And it looks like the next couple of days temperatures will be mild, but not hot. We'll have the full forecast coming up in just a few minutes.
All right, Hilton, thank you. A New York grand jury indicts a former student of murdered teacher Jonathan Levin, the son of Time Warner CEO Gerald Levin. 19-year-old Corey Arthur is charged with first-degree murder, giving prosecutors the option of asking for the death penalty in the case. An alleged accomplice stands charged with second-degree murder. Police say the pair bound Levin with duct tape and then used a knife to torture him into revealing his ATM access code. And then they shot him in the right side of the head.
A tale of trial is bringing up some names and faces from the past. We begin with Dr. Jack Kevorkian. The suicide doctor is off the hook once again. A Michigan judge granting the prosecution's request for a mistrial on day 2, saying the opening statement of Kevorkian's lawyer was improper and prejudicial. Tonight, that lawyer is saying he doesn't think the case will be retried. Kevorkian has already been tried 3 times and acquitted every time. And lawyers in the Ennis Cosby murder case are not ready to go to trial. The judge postponing the case until August. Both sides saying they still have some issues to iron out. Mikhail Markasev is charged with killing the 27-year-old son of entertainer Bill Cosby last January. Cosby's body was found near a Los Angeles road where he'd apparently stopped to change a tire.
Mary Jo Buttafuoco says she's glad Amy Fisher won't be getting out of prison anytime soon. The Long Island Lolita, as Fisher became known, is denied her first chance at parole. Fisher shot the wife of her lover, Joey Buttafuoco, in the face when she was just 17 years old. That was 5 years ago. Parole officials say they're just not sure Fisher can stay out of trouble.
And Pamela Smart is back in court for an appeal, saying she may have been framed. The former New Hampshire teacher is serving life in prison without parole. Smart was convicted 7 years ago in the murder of her husband by her teenage lover, Billy Flynn, who was also a student. Flynn serving 28 years. Smart says Flynn acted on his own. Well, remember when one of the big tobacco companies settled lawsuits with several states? Now their files are being opened, and we're learning an unflattering fact.
That and lots more ahead here on the Night Beat tonight. It's been around for more than 100 years, but tonight one historic building is no more.
And I'm Dennis House. Some Connecticut students had better study hard because paying for tuition just got a whole lot easier. Surprise announcement tonight concerning a scholarship fund and a national talk show host.
And you may be seeing more paramedics on bicycles. We'll show you why on the Health Beat. Stay with us. The Night Beat's coming right back.
Channel 3 Eyewitness News, this is Connecticut's news station. It's about leadership. It's about consistency. It's about giving you news that's relevant to your family. And once again, you've made Eyewitness News Connecticut's #1 choice for news and information. #1 in the morning. #1 at noon. #1 at 5, 5:30 and 6. #1 on the night beat at 11. And #1 on the weekends. This is Connecticut's news station.